Take two. Yes, that's right, take two. Apparently, we're dealing with our own disruptions here today. So let me first just start by saying my name is Joe Mechlinski. I'm going to be your humble servant for the next hour or so as you hear a bit of our response to COVID-19 and the impact it's having on business. So today's topic was dealing with disruption, managing the mindset of yourself, your team, and your client during a crisis. And in terms of what we said you would get out of today, the plan was to give you some tips for how to think about remote work policies, to think about change management, and some guides and some templates that we're using right now for our clients to really serve them through this transition. What I will say is what we sent out more than 10 days ago, as a forum, today's forum for our response to, not only how to think about this in business, but also how to think about this in leadership in life. The world has gotten very different. There are several things that are no longer optional, like remote work. So today, we're going to do our very best to adjust and adapt to this new world order as of today, March 18th, around 3 p.m. East Coast time. And we want to get this out to you all so that you have a way to think of two things. One, what is your timely response to this moment? When you think about defining moments, we have had probably through the history of our collective as a species, many defining moments. And I think we're going to look back on this defining moment if you can remember what it felt like during the Great Recession, or if you remember what it felt like during 9/11, or go back to the savings and loans crisis, or go all the way back to the Vietnam War, World War II, World War I. All of these things, we believe, really help inform some timeless principles of how to deal with this. And so there's a mix of how do we adapt to the new, right? The timeliness of today to some timeless principles that we know will be of service. Now, for what it's worth, I believe that I've been preparing for this moment my entire life. Everything that I've done from the hell that I've been through, the trauma that I've been through, the challenges that I've been through, all of the grace, all of the ease, all of the love, all of the learnings and the lessons that I've gathered up to this point in my life, I believe have prepared me for this moment of how do I really respond in a way that when I look back, my 100-year-old self would be extraordinarily proud. That I would look back in the way that I showed up for my family and for myself. Was I a good son? Was I a good father? Was I a good husband? And how about a leader? Did I do the CEO thing well? Did I help serve as a consultant to some of our top clients? And I have to say this, that we're not the only ones who were built for this moment, right? If you're listening to today's webinar, it's because you're in our community. Frankly, you're in our family now. We are all in this together. And so as you think about all of the things that we've all done to prepare for this moment, I want to invite you right now to really take a big, deep breath, and let's work through this together in a way that, again, we're going to look back on it and we're going to be incredibly proud of not only how we showed up, but we're going to believe at the end of the day, this was all worth it. Now, one of the things that we've noticed here at Shift is over the last, it's probably been now about 60 days since we've been really tracking the business impact of COVID-19, is the notion of everyone's been trying to think about what to do. And, we're kindly reminded by some of the spiritual teachers in our world, the Dalai Lama and others, we're not human doings, we're human beings. And so instead of asking each other right now, how are we doing? Maybe a better question to start today's conversation is, how are you feeling? We as human beings have a hard time with this sometimes, and particularly in business. And what I love about the opportunity we have today in this moment to serve you, our community, is where there are no more lines, blurred lines between work and home, or between live and play. Like, we are literally going to have a conversation about one thing today. How do we do this moving forward? And part of this, we invite you kindly to take this back to your teams. Take everything that we're doing here with this conversation with you back to your teams, and know that this is just the start of a conversation. We have been preparing over the last 10 days, really, not just for this conversation, but also helping our clients with executive communications out to their team so that people understand what's happening in real time. We've already started helping clients think about scenario planning and what is this going to look like when this impacts their business, and then helping teams move from this this in-person to virtual workspace. And so we're going to talk about all these different maps and models and tools. We're going to make sure that you have some practical and tactical takeaways. But it starts with, how are you feeling? And for me, I'm feeling focused. And I've been saying that for the last 10 days or so, because I believe what this moment is giving us all is the gift of presence, the gift to be here now, not what you didn't do yesterday, not what you're worried about today, but right now is the only thing we got. And so giving us a chance to give space to and really open these conversations up. I can tell you that, I'm taking my kids to, the grocery store, we're having conversations with people that we normally wouldn't, which is, how are you feeling? How are you doing? Really gives us a chance to I think, combat this virus with, a virus of humanity. So we'll talk more about this here in just a second. So we're breaking this down today, leadership in crisis, into 4 buckets. We believe these are the 4 buckets that hit not only a timely response to this crisis, but also a timeless response. This timeless meaning these principles that never go out of style, these principles that Stoics and ancient philosophers and psychologists, and now we have neuroscience, all of these things have prepared us for this very moment. So we're going to talk about honesty, hope, how to humanize this moment and how to harmonize the transition from where we all were to, frankly, where we all are in this moment. So, honesty is all about a reality check with what is. So I know we all woke up yesterday with different dreams, different desires, different wants, different expectations. But the only thing we really have now is this reality. And the reality from a business point of view is that right now, this is the stock market picture, which, does not look great. Depending on the day you see this, maybe it bounces back, but right now the shock to the system is palpable. We know there are some specific sectors and industries with clients that we work with that are in healthcare right now are all heads down in the way that they should. We also have clients in entertainment and leisure that, games have been suspended and even indefinitely. You can see this hitting the airline industry has already lost over $100 billion of revenue in Q1. Conferences, this has been a big point that we've been leveraged for, which is, when was it time to make the decision? And so again, depending on the time that you listen to this, you'll realize that these decisions are starting to be made for us. And so what we're going to lay out here is, not how were we early to this, because we don't view ourselves as early. We just view ourselves as maybe having a little bit of a different lens and a filter on how to think about this moment. Now, again, reality check. Right now, some of the smartest people in the world are trying to flatten the curve. You can see a whole new level, I think, of cooperation and collaboration. Remember, Adam Smith, when he wrote the book, about the economy and his economic theory, he used Darwin's quote, this idea of survival of the fittest, which is why I started this way. And when you really think about it, that is certainly true. There's a component of competition that has gotten us to this point of survival as a species. But make no mistake, this idea of collaboration and cooperation, and in this way, not just with the business community, but with local and national governments, with not-for-profits, with the community at large, this is our moment to literally band together. It gives us an opportunity to be on the same side of the table. And even in this case, regardless of your politics, I would say this is a time not to nitpick our leaders, but to help support them, to help throw good energy their way, because we're all going to be faced with pretty tough decisions. Now, there's a whole nother narrative here. If you look a little under the fray, this is like that iceberg analogy, that some of the best stuff is sitting below the water level. It's that there's other things happening. Everything from China is experiencing a different level of this moment. And so they're starting to close hospitals. Now, listen, we don't know what's coming out of China in terms of the right information or the wrong information. I will tell you that, I have friends in China who have been in close contact with since in South Korea and Italy, in the UK. And, we're just trying to share the right amount of information, but it does look like there are some really promising treatments already being developed in India and Israel. The Cleveland Clinic has developed a test that gives you results in hours, not days. We're starting to see, because South Korea and Taiwan have done an amazing job of thinking about the way to flatten the curve. The number of new cases is declining. So there are other narratives, and reality checking is about taking it all in. Now, when you're taking it all in, I think there's an important piece here to take, which is there's something called the availability bias. And the availability bias is really simple. It's a pattern of your thinking. We all have bias. We all have this habit of mind. Now, this is taken from a really amazing book called Thinking Fast and Slow by Danny Kahneman. He won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2002 for his work with Amos Tversky, where they started to change up economic theory. Economic theory was all about you will always maximize your own benefit, your own utility. But what they find was we're human beings. Like, we're sitting in this meat suit, and the way that the brain operates is that we tend to sort of do not necessarily what's always in our best interest. We do whatever is in the frame. And these frames, if you will, as you see me trying to make funny gestures here, is a bias. And right now, we all have information. And what we've been trying to do over the last 60 days is broaden our base of information, because the reality is there's going to be stuff that we all know. There's going to be stuff that we don't know. But it's this third bucket of what don't I know that I don't know. It's that unknown. This is what creates the chaos, the panic, the frenzied activity right now. And so, to the best of our abilities, just to call this out and to continue to educate yourself. Think of yourself as an iPhone. You are constantly needing updates. Now, whether you're doing updates daily or you're doing updates weekly, that's certainly up to you. These are some of the sources that we've been using, everything from the CDC to the World Health Organization to Johns Hopkins. The coronavirus tech handbook is also a really interesting place where you can see some of these crowdsourcing activities happening to really get on the other side of this thing. Some of the other experts and insights that I would look at, there are some really, really good content coming out of Alex Lightman right now on Facebook. You'll start to see a lot of what are the early patterns that we can recognize, and what are some ways through this. Sam Harris, Eric Weinstein, and Ben Greenfield, all recently in the last 7 days have posted some really great podcasts with experts that I believe can be helpful in this moment. Now, there's also a few books. I'd be remiss if we didn't mention Deep Survival has been one of my favorite books over the years by Lawrence Gonzalez. It does this really, really nice job of mapping and modeling what happens to people when they're in life-threatening situations, right? Like if you were stuck in an avalanche, right? Why do some people emerge heroically even, and some people die, or some people maybe not show up as their best selves? And so a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about here today are going to help you with that. But one of the things he talks a lot about in that book is it's all about your mental model. So how do we preserve this mental model in this moment? Well, first, you try not to get sucked into the drama. And on the other side of drama is trauma. And what I've been learning about trauma and drama is, really interesting about the way the body processes these things. And so right now, when things hit the fan, a lot of people sort of show up in one of these three archetypes, either as a victim, like it's happening to me, a persecutor, where it's like, I've got to make you the other, right? And the othering game that's going to start to ensue right now, where we start to draw lines in the sand about, who we look at as family. What I would just stop here for just a quick moment and say, if you're listening to this, you're part of our family. We're extending our circle of friends, of family, of our tribe, of our brothers and sisters, because in this moment, why would we draw lines in the sand? Like in this moment, we have a chance to literally go the opposite way with this panic. It's up to us as individual agents to think about this. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't say the rescuer, which I have a tendency to fall into this martyrism, which is, we can all care, but we can't take responsibility for others. And I think when I say that, that's probably got a bit of an electric charge, but keep this in mind. Right now, we're all going to be faced with double binds, impossible decisions. And it's in these moments, these times where you're not sure what to do. You're faced with personal integrity moments of, should I do a reduction in force with my team? Should I, tell my clients that we can't do what we thought we were going to do? Should I cancel my meetings and events because I have all of this revenue associated? Ladies and gentlemen, this is a chance to literally use everything that has been taught and trained in you to make really good decisions, but you've got to elevate out of the bind. You've got to elevate out of the drama. And so the way you do that, first and foremost, is this is about your fundamental well-being. It's about your agency. One of the things I've loved about the work we've done over the last 19 years with people is that we blur the lines between business and personal, between professional and like what you do at the house. Because we have been talking about this for quite some time, which is you are one person, one holistic person. This frame here is just that. It's just a frame. So we know this to be true. Right now, your fundamental well-being first starts with your emotional response. Now, the good news is we're human beings. And so you get a chance to respond in any way you see fit. And so practicing gratitude on a daily basis. This is something our family recently, now that we've gone remote as of this past Monday, we start every day, with a 5-minute journal, which is a really, really great exercise right now. You don't have to buy it. It starts off with like, what are the 3 things that make you grateful for today? And I would encourage you, this is the time to find the gift, find the beauty in this moment, even though it's so hard for so many people. Now look, my sister is a nurse. She's on the front lines. We have clients in healthcare. I have friends in China and the UK and France and Italy. We've been in conversations with folks. I have friends who have COVID-19. This is not going to be easy, but there is something to be seen here. We just have to see it. So we also got to limit our time on device, media, and screens. I think this is an obvious statement, but we have put in our family right now between 5:30 and 8, just no devices, no screens. It's been incredibly helpful. On the physical side, this is easy. What are you doing to move your body? Today, I'm doing this standing up because, why not? Why would I be sitting down? Like, this is probably a great way to think about keeping your body moving. There's also been some early evidence to suggest supplements, specifically vitamin C, vitamin D, and elderberry. Although we are not medical professionals, this is what we've been encouraging our team, which we've been encouraging our family to do. And I think it's, what's the downside? On the mental side, routines are everything. This is how human beings navigate this, the gap, the space between what you know and what you don't know, like what I thought and what happens, this expectation space. And so when you can put better routines in place of how you wake up, of how you go to bed, which we're going to give a whole outline of that here in just a bit, to how you're sleeping, which again is not something you would normally hear us talk about on a leadership seminar or training, but I would just say in this moment, making sure that you get no less than 7 hours or 7.5 hours of sleep. Matt Walker wrote a great book on this. I highly encourage you to really, really protect your sleep. It is the one thing that your body not only needs, but it could be the single greatest determinant of your health, so they say. And finally, on the spiritual side, meditating. I mean, we've all been given the gift of time back. That has been one thing. You don't have to commute anymore. We're all doing this virtually. And so what could you do 15 minutes a day to just shut your eyes? And if you want to go check out Sam Harris, he has a great meditation app. You can also try 4-7-8 breathing or square breathing, which are just different exercises of how you can breathe in and out. Look, at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is to create some distance between the stimulus and the response so that you don't fall into that double bind, so that you don't fall into kind of a lower self response, that you're not overly modulated, but you're also not underly modulated. And so these are just the first part of the map for today. Now, for those who are listening, who know a little bit about us, there's also a lot of work that you've already been doing over the last several years if you've been working with us, which is engaging your body. No matter what's happening in the external world, you get a chance to really think about, how am I thinking about my priorities, right? Which is really just the spotlight in your head. How am I thinking about my passion or my purpose? And so remember, it shows up very simply, which is the head, right? The priorities in your head are all about this notion of things not happening to you as a victim, but for you, this gift. So again, like really think long form. How could you make this moment something that you look back on and you were so proud of yourself and you believed what you were doing was worth it? How are you thinking about your passion? This is again, a simple frame around, you don't have to do anything in this moment. Like, I get to be home with my kids. I get to be home with my wife. I get to do work differently so that I can explore a better truth. I mean, we are absolutely going to feel like what the future of work looks like right now. And finally, if you've been working with us, you know that we talk a lot about fear and faith. And so this isn't just an axiom of motivation. This is really neuroscience. Your bodies are being filled up with cortisol. And so to the ability that you can not be tunnel vision, but you can expand your perspective and you can expand your awareness, right? It's like that movie Sixth Sense. You can tune into a different frequency. And if you've ever found yourself in flow, it's almost like you have eyes behind you. And if you've played sports and you've seen time, dilate and slow down and things have become effortless, finding this sweet spot of surrender, of flow is really what we're going to talk about here. So that's all on the honesty train. How about the hope train, right? How do we take the reality and how do we find the gift? Well, we first got to understand that when you're dealing with disruption, what it's really helping us do is it's helping us reprioritize what really matters. We're getting rid of the non-essential. I've spent some time this past Monday on the phone with one of our CEO clients, runs a really, really large organization. And one of the things that we were talking about was, the board. And, in this case, this company is in an interesting place because they have a bunch of insurance products and a bunch of financial products, but at the same time, this is a moment where all of the politics, all of the BS will literally get evaporated because right now we don't have time for it. Like, we don't have time to nitpick. We don't have time to think about the things that don't matter. We only have time to do the things that do. And so in this map, what you're going to see here is it's really 3 steps. Are you aware of your fears and aversions? Can you really appreciate adversity? And can you align your actions with your heart? So back to these blind spots and biases, they don't go away here, right? Recently I've had this, really crazy fear of snakes. My mom was bit by a snake growing up, and I've grew up literally transposed her fear to me up until that 60 days ago, where we did a big meeting for Shift Society and we brought in snakes. And one of the snakes was named Lucy. And I got a chance to hold this 5-foot ball python like this in my hands. And so, I share this story with you because when snake hit my hand, I could feel myself literally letting the trauma out. And to realize that I had a new way to think about fear, that fear it's almost like it's resistance. It's resistance to what is. And so I've got some quotes here that I grabbed that I thought were really good, but the one from Tara Brach I thought is great. As long as we are alive, we feel fear. It's an intrinsic part of our makeup, and as natural as a bitter cold winter day or the winds that rip branches off trees. If we resist it or push it aside, we miss a powerful opportunity for awakening. And so look, we're getting a chance to face our fears. As Nietzsche said, the only way out is through. So let's figure out what through looks like. So in this moment, one of the tools that we've created is, and this is a bit from, I believe, strategic coach Dan Sullivan had something similar where, you basically think about what are the things that I'm worried about and what are the things that I can influence, and really trying to figure out what sits in the middle of these two, because I can put in the worry bucket lots of things. Like, I'm worried about humanity. I'm worried about my kids. I'm worried about what we're going to do with, we recently sold our house, and again, that will be an interesting process over the next 30 days. We don't have a next house to get to. So all of these things are worries. And then the question is, again, what can I influence? And so as leaders, this is the conversation to sift, to discern with your team. This gives your team agency back. It gives them sovereignty. It gives them integrity. It makes them feel like they have a sense of control again. And so this is just one quick workup of how to think about this. I love Gabor Mate. If you're not familiar with his work in trauma, the attempt to escape from pain is what creates even more pain. So, you've got to follow the bouncing ball here. This is not necessarily going to be the last conversation you have with us, because, we're going to redouble our efforts to support, our community, to support our clients, and frankly, to just get through this together. So this will be the first of many conversations we'll be having about this. This notion of how do you appreciate adversity? So I've said a little bit about this, but there's a great book called The Happiness Hypothesis by Jonathan Haidt. He does a lot of work around what does it take for us to be happy. And in there, he talked a lot about this map around adversity. So when you think about your test it, your challenge, your push beyond the limits you thought you could get to, what you'll find in that moment is some hidden abilities. You'll find some things that you didn't think you could do before, right? There was all of these old tales told about, the elderly grandmother or grandfather that was able to lift the car off, their grandkids. There's actually truth to some of those stories. There's, also, opportunities where you're going to be pushed in different contexts. And so we've got to figure out what those bright spots look like. But you're also, in adversity, you're going to see who your real friends are. I like to self-proclaim myself as a really crappy friend. Sometimes, a lot of times I'm pretty good, but when you're in the hospital, I'm a good hospital friend. And I think, it's because I've gone through it a lot. And, having gone through, 23 people in my life dying by the time I was 23, I had 23 examples of seeing how humanity and the best of us shows up when it counts. And then lastly, this idea of reprioritizing value. So this is what's happening, whether you'd like it to or not. The question is, what can be great about this for you right now? And this is an actionable question. This is a tool. Questions are really amazing in this moment because what it does is it's going to provoke thought. What we talk about a lot here at Shift is this notion of the third option. So when you think about that double bind between the rock and a hard place, there's a third option that bubbles up that transcends and includes these two options, but it only happens when you elevate yourself, when you see it from a different vantage point, when you're cultivate the witness, if you will, if you're a yogi, this notion of what can be great about this? How can I accept this moment more fully? I've gone through many different moments, even losing my mother, it's probably one of the single greatest tragedies and gifts because, losing her early sucked. It's just the easy way to say it. But it also taught me the preciousness of life. It gave me a good map on how to think about being a parent. It gave me an even better map on how to think about, being a leader and really making the most of our time. And so remember, there's all of these different things for you to discern, but it takes asking some good questions first. Now, the next thing is about realigning your actions to your heart. And I talk about the heart a lot because, I believe a lot of times we're in our heads, and the heads are great. The heads let us think for tomorrow. But I will invoke a bit of my dadism here. My kids love Frozen. We just got done watching Frozen 2. And Olaf, if you've not seen Frozen 2, is a bit of a philosopher. He had this line that he said, when you don't know what to do about everything, all you need to do is the next right thing. And I think in this moment, the next right thing is, where should you be? How should you be? And really listen to your heart. Now, when I say listen to your heart, some of you are going, oh, yeah, I got that part. No. Legitimately, your heart is sending the brain and the head signals. You have a vagal nerve that's coming all the way down to your heart, and your heart is communicating. It's why we hug heart to heart. Your heart emits oxytocin. Your heart tastes, it breaks. It really does help inform the way in which we collaborate and we cooperate. For what it's worth, this is my new routine, which is I've restructured a lot of the things that I did to give myself more just a sense of order. And what it's doing is it's giving me a sense of progress. And so when you think about your ideal day, for me, I love to get up and stretch. I love to meditate. I love to journal. I love to hang out with the kids. Workout is important. You can see a little difference between we're waking up the kids a little later now, getting ready. And then, by 8:30, hitting the phones and hitting my most important conversations. I think probably in this moment, the most important routine people can focus on is their nighttime routine, which is at some point you got to be done working. At some point you got to make dinner. At some point you get a chance to plug in with your significant other, your pet, your dog, or your family. And I think this is a moment that we get a chance to slow down. Remember, the entire world is going through this. So you're not special. I'm not special. But now we get a chance to make things more special. This is, again, a defining moment for our humanity. And so I would take this not just to a day, but take this to a week. How do you want to rethink your month? And I know what you're saying. I don't have time to think about a month. And maybe you don't right now. Maybe we would just stay to a day and a week. I know that we've been using a week as the cycle time to not only get a thought out at Shift, but then how do we get this pushed out to the world so that it stays timely with our timeless thoughts in there. So really it's about how can you be of service and support to others right now? You know, this is a question that I think we all have the ability to answer and ask. It's also a question that you can ask as a leader inside of your organization to your team. You know, if there were ever a time that your team wanted to see you show up, to see you be the leader they think you can be, or the leader they've seen you be in the past, you know, it starts with, how can I help you? How can I be of service to you? And you're starting to see this happen right now. So if, you know, speaking to you for the first 30 minutes of this, you know, workshop here today is about how can you be more honest and how can you be more hopeful just as an agent, as a person, then the question is collectively, how are we dealing with these disruptions in business? How are we, you know, as I'm going to talk about here today, humanize this moment and harmonize this transition? And I think from a humanizing point of view, this is easy. I mean, if you really just think about it, this is a chance to double down on each other. This is a chance not to retreat, not to withdraw. This is a chance for us to show truly, did we mean those things we put in the vision and the values and the mission? Like, did we mean all of those customer service programs where we said we cared? Like, how we show up in these next series of moments, everyone gets a chance to do it over again. Now, I also think leaders find leverage. We've been talking a lot about this with our social media posts recently and just looking for examples where people, you know, I've got this particular line from Alex Sheffron, who's a really amazing executive coach down in Austin. He said, right now, people need to plan instead of panic. And I think that's an amazing piece of advice. Again, great leaders find leverage. You know, focus on we, not just me. You know, I'm going to talk a little bit about Mark Benioff's response to his customers here in just a bit, but I thought he did a really good job of not making this about them, but really the greater collective we. You've got to, in this moment, see opportunities, not just losses. So yes, you've got to play defense, but you've also got to play offense and special teams. You know, we've used this frame here at Shift, not to over sports analogy us, but if you think about defense as your expenses, if you think about revenue as your offense, you know, there's the third response, which is your special teams, which is your response to your world in this moment. It's valuable. It may not be the best response. It may not be the last response, but it is a response. We have gotten so many text messages from people over the last couple of days of like, what's your point of view? What are you guys thinking about? And we try to get some of these things out in pop shots with email communications and using social media. But finally, we just said, hey, why don't we just open up a longer form format so that we can have this conversation today. Make progress versus focusing on problems. Again, the idea of finding the bright spots and changing what was yesterday to what is today. This is an opportunity to recreate. And again, care more about what we're being as opposed to what we're doing. And then lastly, focusing on what you have as opposed to what you don't have. You know, we're getting a chance to, again, experience this moment, this defining moment as humans together. So let's do it together. Now look, in terms of finding these hidden abilities, you know, there are some really, really great examples right now of companies, I think, doing it well. Google and Microsoft are giving away, you know, conference tools right now due to the coronavirus. Google set up a fund to offer paid sick leave to contractors. Think about this. We know that there's going to be an end at some point. Now, I can't tell you if it's 2 weeks, 2 months, or 2 years, or 20 years. But Google's playing long ball. They know that at some point, work is going to start happening again. Microsoft just announced in Tel Aviv that they're hiring 200 people right now because they know a lot of folks are going to go through a reduction in force. And this is a great opportunity to pick up some amazing people. Jack Ma offers you know, help with the COVID tests. And then Amazon, you can see, is hiring 100,000 people right now. And again, yes, in response to this, but it is a bright spot. Starbucks offering free therapy to all workers. This is, again, a pretty easy thing to think about. We have also opened up, we've retained an actual doctor for our team so that if someone has a moment where they don't feel like they can go to their boss or their leader or their direct, they have an outlet. And I think creating space for people is really important. I want to also highlight Mark Cuban plans to pay arena workers amid an NBA stoppage. Now, I love this example because if you've got it, do it. But a lot of people listening to this training webinar today don't have it. You're not going to have the ability to pay people indefinitely. And so I think it's important to do what you can, but not to do what you can't. And so again, hats off to Mark Cuban for doing this. And hopefully more people in his position will continue to do that. We also found some good health bright spots. I talked a little bit about the first injection, or the first person injected with a trial in coronavirus in Seattle happened this week. We've got a 100-year-old Chinese man recovers from the coronavirus, one of the first to be hit and one of the oldest patients who beat it. You know, one of the things that has been a little bit of my just problem listening to the way people are sort of shirking this off is not a big deal because it only hurts those who are older. You know, I'd say, you know, we wouldn't be acting like that if it hurt younger people. And so let's just be mindful and hold space for, you know, just because you don't see it as absolutely devastating, that we're all going to know people who are, you know, personally affected by this in one way or another. And it's just something for us to think about. You know, one of our companies in our portfolio in Shift Ventures was able to ink finally the deal this week. Hungry Harvest raised $7.25 million in a Series A. So hats off to Hungry Harvest and Evan Lutz. This is an example of keeping the wheels of commerce moving. So if you see something in this moment, just like we did in 9/11, you say something, well, in this regard, I think we've got a chance to beat, you know, this virus of panic with this virus of positivity when we see it. And so we were also, we've seen, you know, after a little bit of a weird crunchy spell through January and February, businesses are not only calling us, but we're starting to see it move a little bit. And so just think it's important to point these things out. So for us, our response has been really basic. You know, we, from a company perspective, are following, I think, things that you're already doing. Had we done this workshop 2 weeks ago, you would have said, wow, yeah, we're going to tell our team to stay healthy. We're going to tell our team to be socially distant and to really heighten their hygiene. You know, we're going to think about doing remote work. Now, look, not everybody can do remote work. But for us, because a lot of the work that we do is done in the way that we're doing this with you, you know, we have been working with clients now for 19 years, getting them to get along in person in a room together. We know for a fact that now we're changing the modality. We're going to go from emails to Slacks to Teams to Asana to, you know, Skype to Zoom to GoToWebinar to text messages to phone calls. And we're going to now have to pick up on the new cues as human beings on how we communicate. In fact, one of the workshops that we're definitely going to be doing here in the near future is on communication, because in this new world order of multiple modalities, there's still a way through. And then finally, you know, not finally, I should say, in the Stay Synced, you know, and so you're going to see a different level of programming coming out from Shift. Again, we have been doing and supporting companies remote for 19 years. We have had a remote team for almost entirely that time. We have found our own troubles. Like even today, we meant to do this as a live workshop, as I mentioned in the very beginning, and you know, it didn't happen. So we pivoted, we made an adjustment. And so you're still going to get this, hopefully, but you're going to get it in a different format. And so, you know, we're going to be continuing to offer this conversation on a weekly basis, as well as some really great content that we had, you know, from our podcasts that are amazing around health and happiness. We also got some really good ones out of Inevitable Future of Work around remote work and around policies. And so we're going to get into some of this here in just a second, but just know that we are here to be of service and support to you as you go through this. Stay sane, limit the screen time, the media, the travel, the on-site contact. Again, these are all obvious things at this point. So let's get to this next piece of how do we harmonize this transition, really bringing humanization to life, because we got to go from the reality of what we have, the honesty of it, the hope, just as human beings. How do we think about solving the problem, right? Finding that leverage, to really making sure that it's done with this moment. Just remember, you know, right after the Great Depression, FDR did the whole New Deal. It was a reprioritization of our values. You know, that we would take care of the sick, we would take care of the poor, we would take care of the elderly. Like this notion that we get a chance to change how all of this is done, all of it. Not because we all wanted to, not because we wanted to argue philosophy or different ideologies. Again, we may not have all the answers, but harmonizing the humanity right now is your opportunity. And I invite you in that opportunity as a leader to do so. And look, we've been talking a lot about this. This is probably my favorite part of today's workshop, which is the future of work is here. So we know that the gig economy was about 40% of the nation's workforce. That I've seen that number go up over the last year. I think close to 50% and maybe even up to 70% are the projections. But I got to tell you, when people get a taste, once they get through the crunchiness and the stress of being home and trying to figure out new routines and rituals to like navigate work and life, I would just maybe be open that this might be the way people want to do it. And so again, not everyone can do this, but I do think this idea of agency and putting people in a position where they can be, the agents of their own sovereignty, their own integrity, is really closer to the values of being a human. And so we'll get there together. Look, all the jobs that have been lost to automation, well, we're going to get a chance to see, are there new jobs, right? Are there other jobs in both this moment, but also maybe over the span of time that emerge? We know that tenure is dropping. People aren't staying for decades at jobs anymore. Probably the biggest piece affecting the future of work, and I think this is a moment where 5 generations get a chance to blend together now. Really. They're going to get a chance to have their voice heard, because in this moment, you really have about 70% of the workforce is in the millennial or under category, which puts the majority not in the minority of influence and authority. And so we get an opportunity here to either hear from each other so that people feel valued and feel appreciated, or not. And so I would encourage business leaders. We certainly have been, it's been the guidance and insight from us right now with the executives that we're working with to help them think about what could this next new model be? Because, not only is it the 5 generations of workforce, not is, remote work going to be a thing, but ultimately what we're pushing towards, and I say we here at Shift, how do we get to a point where there was once a time that you didn't have to be somewhere, so location didn't equal value, because now we understand this virtual gig workspace. But can we get to a place where 9 to 5, like how arbitrary is 9 to 5? How arbitrary is Monday through Friday? I mean, we're going to get a chance to rewrite the schedule and rewrite how this is done. So how are you to think about this? Well, in terms of harmonizing this moment, this is one massive change management program. We call them programs of change. And so as we've been helping clients now over the last 19 years, again, we have been the transformation company this entire time. Both, the formula has been simple, which is how do we do it to ourselves, right? So we talk about a better you. How do we do it, to our team, right? A better us. And then how do we take this to the rest of the world, our clients and the community at large? And so that's what you're seeing us do right now, just on a faster velocity, which is we're taking all of the stuff we know works in change management, but we're also applying a bit of timeliness as a filter and an overlay, because things are a little different. This isn't your typical change management program. We've got to think a little differently here. And so in that regard, here are the 5 steps that we are really helping clients navigate. And you can navigate when you listen to this map today, these models. This is going to help you think about your leadership differently too. So first, a leadership reset. We're going to talk a little bit about resetting the mind here. In our first book, Grow Regardless, I talked a lot about reset. It's an acronym, which we'll talk about. Second, executive communication strategy. This is no longer a tactic. This is a strategy. This is the time to really be early, to be real time, to be relevant, and frankly, to be honest. And so we have been penning, if you will, tons of email communications. And in fact, we're going to give all of you access to our communications, both internally, but also some of the documents we're creating for our clients, just to make this available to as many people as possible. Third, it's time to stand up the future of work. As we've talked about the 80-20 model for about 10 years now, which is the model of thinking that 80% of what you do is your job, but 20% of what you do is more of your passion. It's this opportunity to do the things that you really want to do to be even more helpful. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what that Tiger team might look like. This future of work transition, this is that remote piece. How do we go virtual? And then last but not least, how do you play the long game with your customers right now? So first, reset leadership. For those who have not read Grow Regardless, you don't have to. I'll give you the quick acronym for reset. So the R stands for recognize that this is a defining moment. The E stands for expose the elephants. And so what we've done in today's workshop is to expose the biases, expose the blind spots, expose the double binds, expose the drama, the trauma, expose the weaknesses, expose the fears, spend some time in it. Don't avoid it, don't resist it. Because really it's about the S of surrendering to it, which gives you a chance to sort of sit with it and hear it and feel it. The E stands for empathy, and the T stands for new terms, new timing, and new thinking, which frankly is what you're about to experience here. So creating space for tough decisions and stress test for scenarios. This is what we've been spending a lot of time with folks on right now. We personally got together a team, our executive team, which has been working through virtual strategy discussions on best and base case scenarios. So this is that best and worst case scenarios. Where is the supply chain going to hit us hardest first? And I say us, our clients. One of our clients does a ton of business in Asia and China, and is, for the first part of this year, was literally seeing near goose eggs as $1 billion company, which is incredible. I remember in February when we were meeting with them, not even believing that it was having that big of an effect already there. As you think about the idea of thinking about your conferences or your meetings, things can still happen, but you've got to run some counterfactual simulations, which is what if scenarios. Like, what if Donald Trump wasn't the president? Or what if Mitt Romney was the president? Like these ideas, and that's, by the way, not a personal feeling in this moment. Again, I want to say this publicly, which is I am rooting for the president. I'm rooting for our government, and I'm rooting for every leader in place right now, regardless of how I felt yesterday. And I think that support, that net, this space that we're all going to help each other with is incredibly important, just as an aside. Red team, blue team, which is once you come out with a strategy, once you come out with a series of critical moves, then do you have space to debate vigorously? One of the things that I loved about Ryan Holiday's last book, which we should have thrown in here, is called Stillness is the Key. He highlights the entire JFK, Pigs of Bay situation, and really how he let his team debate, and debate. The fors, the againsts, the pros, the cons of all the different decisions. And that particular part of this is something we're spending a lot of time with folks on. Lateral thinking exercises, which is how do we take something that sits horizontally, not in a pattern that's ever been around. And so there's a great book on this called The Medici Effect, which parallels sort of what happens when you mix two different disciplines, like when you're a polymath. And so when you look at termites in Africa, they have these 6-foot mounds that inside never get hotter than 70 degrees or so, never get cooler than 70 degrees. And so there have been architects to model that in the way in which we build buildings. And so I'm using this example to show you that there is going to be something that you're going to see. A new model is going to emerge on how we do everything, how we do business, how we do work. And so right now, sitting in the space and making time for this is an incredibly important piece. Now, as you're doing this, I do think it's important to put guiding principles in place. And so we've created a series of guiding principles that we're using, which is, again, you've seen them before, but plan instead of panic. Focus on we, not just me. See these opportunities. Don't look back. Don't use sunk cost bias, which is what you lost, which you're never getting back, which is evaporated, which is disintegrated. Yesterday is gone. Make progress. Progress includes today, having the chance to share all of this with you is our map and model of how we're thinking about this, but knowing that, look, it didn't happen the way that we wanted it to. And I think that's the lesson in this, which is, we can have a good plan, but as my wife has a tattoo of her father who passed about 4 years ago, and he, during our wedding, had this great line during a speech, which he said, we make plans and God laughs. And I personally believe that that is, an incredibly important way to think about this, regardless of your spiritual beliefs. And in fact, Erica put, my wife, that tattoo on her wrist, just to remind her that, again, we make plans and God laughs. Change from what was to what is, caring more about what we're being versus what we're doing. And then last but not least, acknowledge that what we have instead of what we don't have, this idea of an attitude of gratitude. So What is executive communication strategy? It's real time, it's transparent, it's dynamic. We have been working on a weekly email bulletin, the state of the state, we're calling it. We've created a place in Slack and Teams where people can get real dynamic information. We're encouraging people to surface stories of progress. We're also encouraging people to surface stories that are not easy to read. And so I think, again, as everyone's going to be trading information back and forth, this herd effect of, really making sure that we're sifting the right information is incredibly important. And so our email bulletin that goes out, if you want access to that, we will certainly make it available. Weekly cuss and fuss sessions. So what is a cuss and fuss session? This is just a space of no judgment. This gives your team a chance to come together. We just did our first cuss and fuss session this past Friday. We called everybody in kind of a virtual setting and we said, how's everybody feeling? It's how we started today's workshop. And we just spent 45 minutes going all the way around, hearing and feeling the stories of our team, hearing and feeling their frustrations. Again, moments like this require leaders to do the opposite sometimes. And the opposite's going to feel like you got to go, 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 go. When in fact, just take a deep breath and figure this out. And you'll do it with your team and you'll do it together. We got this. We do. We've also started to increase the frequency in which the leaders of the organizations talk. And so adrenaline calls were something we did back in 2005, 6, and 7. In fact, we did adrenaline calls for 3 years, every single day from 8:02 to 8:10, 8:12 rather. This was a quick tactic that I learned from Jack Welch, who recently passed. So I give a shout out to him on this particular tactic, which is he used to do a daily call with his executive team the entire time. Alan Mulally, when he took over Ford, he did something similar, which is, again, in times of crisis, it's important to have a frequent communication loop. This is also an incredible moment to reiterate your vision, your mission, your values, to create one-pager FAQs and templates. And good news, you don't have to do a lot of this. We're going to have a lot of this stuff on the back end of this webinar today that you're going to have access to. And virtual and video team meetings and one-on-ones, again, we have good maps and models on this. And we were going to be, really, again, there's no pitch here. This is us being of service and support to our community. There's no strings. There's not going to be a back end. There's not going to be some conversion. We're here to help because we know it's important and it's just who we are. Second, or I should say third piece, establish tiger teams. And so, McKinsey recently came out with some guidance today on this, which is, when you think about the organization as a pyramid, as a triangle, as this hierarchy, what the future of work really was about was moving to a team structure. And so what's kind of cool about this is 10 years ago, we've been using action learning projects, tiger teams, this notion of gathering a work group to get work done that's not typical job functions. And so here's a great little exercise of thinking about what your response leadership team need to look like. Who are the folks that you're thinking about medical and just overall your response as an organization. And then when you think about your action teams, you've got, external communications, financial, supply chain, colleague outreach, potentially depending on your vendor management situation. All of these things need to be reconfigured or reset. So wherever you thought yesterday that your structure as an organization looked, this is your invite to put yourself in teams and to really, with ease and grace, transition to this new normal, which is this future of work, this remote, this virtual. Look, I know plenty of folks within our client network who get a lot of business done using Zoom or Skype or other tools that give you the chance to still get business done. Now, I used all these bright spots earlier today, and there's many, many more, particularly within the Shift network. We have seen a lot of our clients right now double down on their folks. And so, giving your people a chance to do that would be important. Transitioning the future of work, we gave our team, notice to come get their stuff from the office. We gave them some individual sort of just checklists of how to think about remote work, leveraging telecommunication tools like Teams and Skype and Zoom. And then, of course, little things like save all your shit to the cloud. And so that notion, for us, we're going to give you guys more maps and models, but instead of like explaining all of the tactics, we'll give you guys a tactic in a document. Last piece is to go on the long game with your customers. And so again, I'm going to follow a framework that was given to me by Richard Saul Wurman, the founder of TED, about innovation. How innovation happens is following an acronym, ANOSE, which is ANOSE. And so you'll see this here, but it's really about how do you think about innovating? Because in this moment, you're being asked to evolve. And part of evolving, if you want to take it to a biological function, is this idea that you're stressing the cell enough, but not too much, but enough to find a new version of itself. And so in this moment, you get a chance to do this. If you were crappy at customer service before March 18th, you get a chance to do it really well moving forward. And it's pretty simple. So we'll give you access. Mark Benioff just put out a great communication 2 days ago where he's adding more value to his community. They're going to be setting up different pricing programs for people who need the platform. They've started a fund, which is kind of amazing. One of our clients also just did this, which is they set up a small business fund, and we're really excited, about helping them get that out to the marketplace. Second thing that you can do to go above and beyond is to anticipate the needs of your customers. Loom knew as a video platform that they were going to, maybe have an influx of all the education sort of sectors, because teachers and students we may be learning, through Zoom and Loom and all these other cool tools. And they said, you know what, let's play long game. Like, just get on the platform and we'll figure it out later. Play the opposite game. I love this play from a customer service perspective, which is Chef Jose Andres is an amazing human being. You've probably seen him in all the humanitarian disasters like Puerto Rico and others. He goes right into the eye of the storm, no pun intended, and he makes it happen. And so in this particular case, instead of looking at his restaurants as a liability, right? Because restaurants and travel and entertainment, it's all being sort of, stopped or slowed. And again, because we're all in this together, it's like, how do you reposition your vantage point? And what he saw was, hey, why don't we make these centers to help feed people who really, really need it, who are quarantined? And so it's a pretty amazing story there. Subtract to the essentials. Action by the governor here in Maryland has changed the emissions, like that fun exercise to take your car to an emissions place to get it tested, are now going to be facilities to test for COVID-19. And so again, it's just an example of like, pare it all the way down to the essentials and what can we do and leverage here. And then lastly, find the epiphany. There's going to be new models to emerge here. And so I want to say this, as much as I'm excited about the epiphanies of new models, I caution everyone, this is not a time to ask for more. This is not a time to worry about your sales conversions. This is not a time to worry about your numbers, because remember, everybody is going through it right now. Everyone is being slowed to some degree. And so because this is happening to all of us, you get a chance to just know that the bell curve of wherever you sat, wherever your market position was, is likely not to change. And so using this moment not to gouge, using this moment to not, take this shock, whether demand or supply side on the business side, advantage of. I've used this example a few times, which is, as a consumer, if you have purchased a ticket to a conference or a concert, don't ask for your refund. Leave the money in. Like, maybe you're not in a position to do that, but you probably are. It's the same thing of watching your favorite restaurant right now. Buy a few gift cards. Like, get in the game. We don't need spectators telling us how it's done. We need every single person to lock arms and to make this a moment. And Shine Distillery in Portland, they were a distillery, now they're making hand sanitizer. Again, a really, really great example of playing a part in progress. So as we wrap up here today, I first want to say thank you to our team here at Shift. You guys have been incredible, incredible humble warriors through this and getting us in a place where we can serve and support our community more. So thank you first and foremost to you all. Next, thank you to our clients because we got this. That's right. We all got this. We are all going to get through this together, and we are going to find the next best version of ourselves, both professionally and personally, but also from a business standpoint. Like, this is our chance to get rid of the bullshit. And finally, I want to thank you to anyone out there who's playing a part in progress. Let's continue to support each other. Let's not use this as a time to divide, but to unite. And remember this quote I found on one of my favorite crypto newsletters is, look through the darkness. The best stories are written in times of severity. And so in closing, remember, we're all in this together. Slow down. Like I probably could have used that my own today. Slow down, use time as a tool. Remember, the only way out is through. We've got to double down on humanity. This is about being in service and support. And I will tell you, for me, getting ready for today's, webinar, I did a little exercise that I do a lot, which is, I wrote a letter. And I wrote a letter to myself in, wanting to say, hey, how did I do? How did I do in this moment? Like if I got this exercise from a dear friend and mentor of mine, Yannick Silver, he has a different frame on it, but it's the general same lever, which is, can you distance yourself in time? And can you search for the more wise you, the more mature you, the elder in you, the elder of wisdom? And can you look back and write a long form letter about how you hope you showed up in this moment, about who you be right now to the people who matter most? And again, what were your experiences? What were your lessons learned? Like, what could you tell yourself today? This letter writing exercise is not for the faint of heart, because if you do it, I think it will help open and unlock some things that maybe you're not seeing. And so the last piece, this is the uplifting, motivational part of today's workshop. If you've not read The Top 5 Regrets of Dying, I personally find it interesting that we in the society don't talk about death. Some of you know we did a conference on mortality just this past fall. Again, in simpatico with the comment that I made about we have been preparing for this moment our whole lives. We just did a conference on death where we just talked about this book and another book called Mortality. But in this book, this woman, Bronnie War, is a nurse in Australia, and she interviewed, I think it was about 1,000 folks at the end of their life, and she compiled all of their regrets. And the reason I think this is important is because this is old wisdom. This is timeless. This, as we all know, that people find themselves experiencing. And when you hear these words, you'll likely hear truth, and you won't have to be debated and undecided over it. So the first one, I wish I had the courage to live a life of truth to myself, not the life others expected of me. And so again, I think this is a moment of washing out the bullshit. Number two, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. And so again, I know this flies in the face of a lot of our clients who need to make money, and we appreciate that. Remember, we are all about making the game better, and that's a component of it. But I would also say there probably aren't a lot of people who are in the later stages of this particular journey called life that they're going to look back and say, I wish I would have worked more. I mean, we can all hear that, but do we feel it? Do we fully embody that lesson? I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. I've talked a lot about this, like, how do you feel? I opened up, the first take of this webinar before we had a little bit of the technical difficulties, saying I was scared, because I am. That's a part of me right now. I'm scared for people. I'm scared for my family. But I'm also, I feel that. And I can feel that fear coming in, and I'm not going to avert it anymore. I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. It's been really amazing over the last 10 days of having the opportunity to reconnect with my, one of my best friends from college to, my newfound tribe in so many different pockets and communities. And again, this is a moment where we will not forget. Are we, as my therapist and mentor says, are we going to be a herd of gazelles that when a cheetah runs into the pack, everybody scurries and worries about themselves? They're in that constant state of fight, flight, or freeze. Or are we going to be a wolf pack where we have each other's back, where that cheetah comes into that wolf pack and it's like, I hope that cheetah packed a freaking lunch. And so to me, I hope that virus packed a freaking lunch, because this maybe, yes, will be hard, will be challenging. This will be irrelevant, hopefully in a short period of time, but if not, we will get through this together. And then the final thing is, I wish I had let myself be happier. I think, I've struggled with this one a lot in this moment, because it's hard. It's hard to find happiness. It's hard to find, all of the bright spots. It's hard to, frankly, give yourself permission to feel happy, because you feel guilty over how hard it is for some people. And look, the truest form of intelligence, as F. Scott Fitzgerald said, was holding two opposing thoughts in your head at once, but still being able to operate. So you can be scared, but continuing to move forward and finding some bliss. Take a walk. We've been doing this now, for a whole 3 days into remote work, of spending the last part of the day out in the water or out in the wilderness with the family, out in nature. And it's been absolutely fantastic. So what is next? We've got a series of things that we're preparing for you right now. First, on the resources side, we're going to have a rapid response package, which is going to be a series of email communications. Some of these are going to be out of date, but some of these will be relevant for you now. We're going to also encourage you to take a look at the Hour of Power, which is how do you reset your week. And so it's a really fantastic exercise. I've been personally doing the Hour of Power for almost 20 some years now. And I would say in this particular time, give yourself the gift. We're going to be doing this here at Shift Friday at 2 o'clock. We're going to ask everybody does it together on their own, of course, individually, but we have this shared experience together. Virtual work. We have a guide that we're going to be pumping out here soon that you guys will have access to that really doesn't speak to just like the technical, tactical, practical, like how do I put my computer in the internet, which I know sounds ridiculous and absurd purposely, but really how do we find a way to like do it better? And so you're going to see some really helpful tips in there to do it better. The upcoming Shift programming is going to have this notion of a weekly webinar series, some more tips, tricks, tools, tips, and trainings, and then also featuring some really amazing leaders. So this past Monday, we interviewed Doug Brackman, who wrote a book called Driven. He's a gentleman I told you we have now partnered with and collaborated with to help not only our team and our clients, but he is an expert in helping people through trauma. And so one of the things that is amazing here at Shift is that we not only have an amazing team and amazing clients and amazing partners, but we even have amazing experts and icons and everybody from, we'll do that part later. So you're going to get CEO communications in this. I would encourage you to check out the podcasts. We're going to keep keeping these up to date, and we've held back on some content that we were going to get out there. And, last but not least, I would say this, this is a moment. This is a moment to double down on each other. This is a moment not to retreat. This is a moment to feel. This is a moment to be. This is a moment just to exist with each other. And from a business point of view, there has never been a better moment than to be the leader that when you look back 50 years from now, you will not only be proud of yourself, of not only how you showed up and how you were experienced, but at the end of the day, you can look back on this moment and know it was worth it. Because I think that is the one value that we're all constantly monitoring and measuring and managing against, which is how do I make sure what I'm doing is worth it? So with that said, I hope you found this worth it today. Please spread the good word. We are here to be of service and support. It does not matter who you forward this webinar to. We want to just be here in the community to the best of our ability because we got this, folks. We will see you next week, and peace and love.